In September 1900, a powerful hurricane struck the island city of Galveston, Texas, creating the deadliest natural disaster in United States history. At the time, Galveston was a thriving coastal city, with around 40,000 residents living on a low-lying barrier island only a few feet above sea level. The island's highest natural elevation measured less than 9 feet above the ocean, leaving it dangerously exposed to flooding. Weather forecasting in 1900 was limited to ship reports, telegraphs, and scattered observations, meaning storms were poorly understood and difficult to track. Meteorologists knew a storm existed in the Atlantic, but its true strength and direction were not fully recognized as it moved toward the Gulf of Mexico. Warnings were issued advising residents to move to higher ground, yet many people underestimated the danger because strong coastal storms were common and rarely catastrophic. On the morning of September the 8th, tides were already unusually high and waves rolled farther inland than normal. Rain fell steadily while winds slowly intensified, creating unease but not panic among residents. Businesses remained open, children played outdoors, and visitors continued enjoying the seaside atmosphere. By early afternoon, seawater began flooding streets on the eastern side of the island. The rising water cut off escape routes as bridges connecting Galveston to the mainland became unsafe or collapsed. Many families realized too late that evacuation was impossible. Wind speeds increased rapidly, tearing roofs from buildings and sending debris through the air. The local weather station recorded winds exceeding 100 miles per hour before its instruments were destroyed. Later analysis estimated sustained winds of roughly 130 to 140 miles per hour, placing the storm at Category 4 strength. As evening approached, the most dangerous element of the hurricane arrived. A massive storm surge pushed ashore ahead of the hurricane's center, raising water levels dramatically within minutes. The surge reached heights between 8 and 15 feet, higher than much of the city itself. Water rushed across the island, swallowing entire neighborhoods beneath churning waves. Wooden houses were lifted from their foundations and smashed together as they drifted through flooded streets. Debris from one collapsing building slammed into the next, creating a chain reaction of destruction across the city. Residents fled upward into attics, climbed onto rooftops, or clung to floating wreckage in desperate attempts to survive. The storm intensified as darkness fell, leaving survivors trapped in total blackness with only the sound of wind and crashing water around them. Lumber and metal sheets became deadly projectiles carried by hurricane-force winds. Many people attempting to reach safer buildings were struck by debris or swept away by currents. Entire families disappeared as homes collapsed or were carried out to sea. Witnesses later described hearing cries for help carried through the roaring storm, voices that quickly vanished beneath the wind. By nightfall, nearly the entire island was underwater. 2/3 of the city was destroyed during the height of the hurricane. The storm raged for hours, with waves continuing to batter buildings already weakened by flooding. Many deaths occurred slowly as survivors became trapped beneath debris or drowned inside collapsing homes. Others survived the winds only to be overcome by rising water levels during the night. Shortly before midnight, winds began to weaken and the waters slowly started to recede. When dawn arrived on September the 9th, survivors emerged into near total devastation. Galveston had been transformed into a landscape of splintered wood, overturned structures, and endless wreckage. Thousands of buildings had been destroyed, including more than 2,600 homes. Every remaining structure in the city suffered some degree of damage. Bodies were scattered across the island, tangled in debris, or washed ashore by retreating tides. Early reports underestimated the disaster because the scale of destruction seemed almost unbelievable. rescuers arriving from the mainland quickly realized the catastrophe was far worse than imagined. Between 6,000 and 12,000 people were killed, with around 8,000 deaths most commonly accepted by historians. This meant roughly 1 out of every 5 residents lost their life during a single night. Most victims drowned, while others were crushed by collapsing structures or struck by flying debris. An estimated 10,000 survivors were left homeless in a city that had almost completely vanished. The immediate aftermath brought new horrors as heat and standing water caused rapid decomposition of thousands of bodies. Officials feared disease outbreaks and struggled to manage the overwhelming number of dead. Initial attempts to bury victims at sea failed when tides returned bodies to shore. Mass funeral pyres were eventually built, and crews worked continuously burning remains to prevent epidemics. Survivors were often forced to participate in recovery efforts involving neighbours, friends and family members. Communication lines had been destroyed, leaving Galveston isolated from the outside world for crucial hours after the storm. Once telegraph connections were restored, aid began arriving from across Texas and the wider United States. Doctors, nurses, supplies and volunteers flooded into the ruined city to assist survivors. Despite the aid, the psychological shock lingered as entire communities struggled to comprehend the scale of loss. The hurricane permanently altered Galveston's future. Investors and businesses began shifting toward Houston, whose inland harbour appeared safer from coastal storms. Galveston's era as the dominant commercial centre of Texas effectively ended. Yet residents refused to abandon the island entirely. Engineers designed a massive seawall to protect the city from future storm surges. In an extraordinary engineering effort, large sections of the city were physically raised by pumping sand beneath buildings and streets. Entire structures were lifted, while daily life gradually resumed around reconstruction work. These changes reshaped Galveston into a city built directly from the lessons of disaster. The storm also changed meteorology by exposing the dangers of limited forecasting and poor communication. Scientists increasingly emphasized international cooperation and improved storm tracking in the decades that followed. The 1900 hurricane remains the deadliest natural disaster ever recorded in the United States. Its destruction demonstrated how vulnerable coastal cities could be when geography, technology, and human confidence collided. Survivor stories describe a night defined by rising water, relentless wind, and the terrifying realization that escape was impossible. For many, the storm became known simply as the storm, a defining moment passed down through generations. Today, Galveston's seawall stands as a reminder of both tragedy and resilience born from catastrophe. The events of September 8, 1900 remain a powerful warning of nature's ability to transform a thriving city into ruin within a single night. More than a century later, the memory of the Great Galveston Hurricane endures as a story of sudden destruction, human endurance, and the lasting consequences of underestimating the sea. You've been listening to an audio podcast from History's Mysterious Minds, a story from the past filled with mystery, intrigue, and questions that still echo through time. If you found this episode interesting, thought-provoking, or informative, please take a moment to like this episode, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with others who enjoy mysterious stories from history. Your support helps us continue exploring real events, fascinating people, and the moments that shaped our world. Thank you for listening. This has been History's Mysterious Minds.